Good afternoon. Welcome. This is the November 15th City Council work session. First, we have a presentation regarding Linn County Housing Trust Fund. Tracy Achenbach, you're first.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks. I am not sure. First, I have to say, I'm not sure why I haven't been here before. I'm a little embarrassed about that. The Housing Fund for Linn County, how many before you had something in your packet had ever heard of us before? See, this is bad. It's my fault. So housing trust funds are actually established across the state of Iowa. There's now 27 of them. So the Housing Fund for Linn County is one of 27. And we are the only entity in Linn County that can apply for funding at the state that is earmarked for housing trust funds. There's a housing trust fund program that the Iowa Finance Authority is given responsibility for. The organization formed itself in about 2007, and then we received our first state funding award in 2008. I have a 13-member board of directors. Some of those, I believe, are representative of Marion. And I think on the one sheet that was in your packet that had the history of some of the funding that we have provided, it listed my board members down the left-hand side so you could see who those great board members are. So what our purpose is, we have to do two things by the state rules, and that is what we do has to be about housing, and then the second thing is we have to benefit people of low to moderate income. And then even more so, the state requires us that about a third of our money has to benefit folks that are at 30% or below, so extremely low income. So what the Linn County, each housing trust fund can determine how they want to use their money and how they want to award their money. What the Housing Fund for Linn County Board has decided to do is they prefer to award their funds to organizations or entities who provide that housing or developers who provide that housing. And then what they have also decided, and this has been probably in the last 4 years or so, they've decided to offer it twice a year, once in the spring that has some grant funding, and then in the fall with some loan funding. So what we do if we have an opportunity is we apply for funds at the state once a year. We apply for the maximum amount that we can apply for, and then that application requires a 25% local match. So I'm going to be honest, that's one of the reasons I'm here, because I would like the city to consider maybe providing us out of your social services, or I don't know what you would use, but to provide us some funding for our local match. We get quite a few contributions from lenders that total about $15,000 a year. In the past, we've been able to use an FHLB grant that we've been able to count as our local match, but that program is getting more and more difficult to be able to receive. And so this year we applied for funding that we had to provide the 25% local match completely from either the communities or the lenders in the area. And we also used some of our loan repayments. So the city of Cedar Rapids stepped up and gave us $24,000 this year, which of course, since we have to have a 25% local match, then that allowed us to be able to apply for the funding. So to give you an idea then, our application this year, we had an opportunity to apply for $347,910. So we had to have a local match of almost $87,000. And we were able to do that. But it's only going to get more difficult and more difficult. And one of the points that I like to make is that any projects you have in your community that are going to benefit low to moderate income, that are housing projects, would be able to apply to us during our funding rounds to be able to get assistance. And quite honestly, one of the reasons that one of my board members thought I should come today is that we had I'll say an emergency request from the Marion Senior Living for the Mound View Manor. They had a situation where they had to change out 35 heat exchangers, and they had contacted HUD, they had contacted the Iowa Finance Authority, and neither one of those could help them with that. Both of them ended up contacting me and asking, is it possible the Housing Trust Fund can help them? Because they had, a lot of the folks that are living there are extremely low income seniors, and they had a lot of folks who were not going to have heat and probably did not have heat, which luckily we've had pretty good weather, but they would not have had heat. I know they planned to have the project done at the end of this week, but we were able to step in and provide them a combination grant loan for $98,300, which allowed them to go ahead and know that they could get that project done. So I guess, and the sheet that I have that I provided to you then shows the number. We have had a minor repair program that was with another grant through ECOG. ECOG administered it for us, but it came through the Housing Trust Fund. And then we also supplemented that with some of our own funding, like for the homeowners that needed a little bit more than the grant could provide, and then the Housing Trust Fund provided some money. And then, of course, with the Marion Senior Living, which is 35 households. So the total is 68 of the known Marion households. But as I stated below, we fund a lot of agencies like Waypoint, Willis Dady, Home to Stay, Partnership for Safe Families. All of them have reported then when they end up helping someone, they have to report at what address they are living, and some of them have been at Marion. So we've also assisted a lot of folks through that way. So we take the local match that communities and lenders provide us, we combine it with the state money that we get, and then we turn around and make it available to the housing organizations and entities in Linn County. And I want to make sure that you understand that if you have someone who's talking about doing a project that's going to benefit low to moderate income, to make sure that you send them my way at least to have me talk to them to see when they need the funding may not match when we're going to make it available. We do, like in the case of Marion Senior Housing, it was outside of our regular rounds, but it was obviously an emergency. So my board, we even had an emergency board meeting so that we could try and help them out and get it approved. Can I ask questions for questions? Does anybody have any questions for me?
Any questions?
Yes, I do.
Good.
First of all, have you pursued possibly making application through the hotel motel tax as far as Marion's contribution?
I could do that, whatever the, probably I would look to Lon for that direction, but I can do it however you'd like me to. But I also am not here standing today. We've just submitted an application. It will not be funded till January or February, so really what I'm looking for is maybe for next year when we have to do it, that we have a commitment from the city for some funding.
This might be a good source and probably easy. Secondly, I noticed that you have Kingston Hill down here. They're not operating anymore, are they?
Well, that is just one of the awardees, and that was one of the earlier ones before my time.
Okay,
so
it's
yeah,
closed.
we just listed the ones that we've awarded.
And thirdly, veterans assistance.
Well, you know, different programs can apply to us, and they have certainly. That's just up to them whether they apply to us for funding. Of course, through our assistance through some of the transitional and homeless providers, veterans probably have been assisted, but we don't necessarily, we don't ask for that information when they provide it to us, unless they want to make it a point in their application to help them get funded.
I think it should be because, you know, I mean, veterans are kind of short-circuited all the way around, short-changed as far as being taken care of after they return. Mm-hmm. And there's so many that have the emotional, mental problems.
Yeah. Yep, I'm sure we've helped a lot of them. It's not something that I have received applications for veteran-specific projects or some kind of assistance, like rental assistance or housing assistance. But we don't ask it on our application unless they want to bring that up, yeah.
Okay, well, I still think hotel motel might be a good source of funding, and it would be, I mean, there's money there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can tell you that the state really wants to see, that's part of my commitment to the state, is that we have buy-in from the local communities and the lenders. And we certainly have a lot of lender contribution that we receive here, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else?
Other questions?
So you said you had 24,000 committed from Cedar Rapids. Was that for next year, or is that this year?
They committed it for this year's application, but it would actually be for our 2017 grant.
Okay. So for Marion, then, what, did you have an estimate for what you would like to see from Marion?
You know, no. Probably my board would kill me to know that I said that. I guess I could tell you 24,000, but I don't know that that's, we fund a lot of projects, but Cedar Rapids has provided funding in the past, and so have the the Lynn County Board of Supervisors. So we have gotten other funding from those sources as well. And it would be something like if you included it in your budget, and it would be next year, it would just that I would have to have a commitment by September of some time, and then you could pay it at whatever time in that fiscal year that you wanted to. That's how we would normally
Question for
do it.
Lon. Have we ever budgeted this before, or
No, this is a new request.
it's something new? Okay. Thank you very much for coming here.
Yeah.
Well, I figured it was a new request. That's why I suggested the hotel motel, because that's not really I mean, it's, the amount is there, and the applications come in for who's going to get what.
Right.
But it's not really part of the budget.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that'd be something to look at.
Other questions? Thank you very much.
Yep. Just remember us if you have developers or organizations that don't know about us, that they can apply to us.
Thank you.
So this Mountain View, they're in good shape now?
It sounds like all of the heat exchangers will be in place by the end of this week. They were prepared to move people if they had to, which I hated to see because it's for the seniors, and a lot of them were really low income.
Right.
But I think they might have lucked out because of the weather, and so they're thinking they're going to be done by the end of this week.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you.
Finance?
Yeah, Your Honor, I got number 8 starred on my section. It's kind of a housekeeping item. When somebody comes to the city right now and wants to do a parade or a march or a walk, the code says that they're supposed to go to the city clerk's office and we're going to issue them a permit. I don't think we've ever done that. Common practice is what we do or require of them is to get a hold harmless out of the city manager's office, and that gives us pretty much all the information we need. So I think what we would like to do here, staff is just recommending we amend that section of our city code just to strike out city clerk, put city manager in, strike out the word permit, and insert just a hold harmless, just because that's the way we've done it for years.
Is there, I mean, it's just automatic? Anybody can just,
Once they fill out a hold
have a
harmless,
parade or
that does have to be approved by the city manager, and it goes through all the different departments for their sign off and
so there's
comments.
no criteria or anything like that they have to meet before they can have a parade or close down a street? Or
There is some language, I think, in the ordinance.
Okay. So
Well,
that
then-
wouldn't change?
No, that wouldn't change.
They would
This-
still have to meet whatever criteria there are?
It just would change who they go to, which department would be issuing that.
Well, in that new ordinance that is going to replace, I think that probably would take care of any demonstrations, et cetera, that might come to Marion. I like the idea that it has to be requested 72 hours in advance. And I don't know, because I don't have a copy of the Marion Code, what's the punishment?
I think they can just revocate the permit. I mean, it's up to the city
It should be
manager.
a lot tougher because seeing what's going on in other cities, whoa, it's scary.
Yeah, I agree. I think we ought to have some sort of, something that covers parades, marches, or whatever with what's going on in the world that.
Yeah, we've had this section of the code for a long time. It's just, like I said, it just always referred to a permit, which we've not done a permit ever, to my
Yeah.
knowledge. And then rather than go through my department, it would go through the city manager's office.
But like right now, hold harmless, I mean, that has to go through a council cycle in order to.
It goes through council if there's a noise issue. But I think if there's no noise issue, I think Lana has the authority to go ahead and issue it.
Yeah, we do. We receive a lot of requests for things like people that want to put a dumpster out in the street in front of their house for a remodeling project, or they're going to have a relative come into town and park an RV for a couple of days. Those are the typical things that you'll see on hold harmlesses. But we do also receive ones and have them filed for things like the parades. They'll give us the route beforehand. It gives engineering, public service, police, and fire a chance to review it and provide input on it. We do have the ability to say no if it's not going to work or it's going to cause too much of a traffic snarl, but it really gives us an opportunity to review it at the staff level and just make sure they're not going to cause too many troubles. When it comes to things like demonstrations, we do have some ability to regulate where those types of things may occur during political events. For example, this year we had a group that was trying to do signs in the middle of the median in uptown Marion. We can't do things like that because that's a distraction to traffic. It was blocking the crosswalks so that people in wheelchairs couldn't get through, but there wouldn't have been anything to prevent them from doing it on the regular sidewalk where you could move out of the way and not block people. When you talk about stuff like the other demonstrations, there's a line that crosses from doing a peaceful demonstration into criminal conduct, and the police department already has the ability to address those types of issues if they come up. So I don't think you'd want to try and enact something as a civil penalty when it already is crossing that line for some of those things into criminal behavior.
Besides, I don't think George Soros knows we exist.
Okay. Any other questions? So, who would make that decision then? I mean, it would come to your office, Lon, and
It comes to my office, and then it gets routed around to all the departments for consideration. Like if it happens on a staff meeting day, we'll send it around during those days. Otherwise, it's the responsibility of the applicant to take it around to all the departments, have it reviewed, and have the appropriate signatures before it comes up to my office. We have the ability to apply conditions. For example, a typical condition, like for the barbecue rendezvous, might be that yes, you can close down 6th Avenue, but you have to preserve an area that you can move barricades out of the way and emergency vehicles can come through. So those are the types of things that will show up on the hold harmless application as conditions of approval.
so various departments have a chance to review it.
All departments have a chance to review it.
That's just a standard procedure.
Yeah, there's actually sign-offs for all the departments on it, separate from mine.
And you have you are the final person signing off
It
on
only comes to me after all the departments have had a chance to review it.
Or you personally, in your department?
Yep.
Okay.
And if any of the departments, but I can only think of maybe 1 or 2 instances where it's happened where a department has just recommended that it not occur. I've always gone with the recommendations of the department heads.
What if you're out of town?
Then it would go to Dan as the acting. His capacity as acting.
Where in the ordinance will this sit? What section?
Yeah, section 42 in the city code.
Thank you. Sorry. It was right there. I was looking for it down below.
Other questions on this?
Sorry about that.
Okay. Who will present the police department item? Hey, you, Lon?
Yeah, the police department has a canine vehicle that is up for replacement, and there was some interest in making it available to other departments who may have a need for it. I believe when they were looking at it, they were getting a better value selling it outright than they would have on trade-in, so it was a better net benefit for the city to sell it to a smaller department as a used vehicle rather than trade it in against a new one.
This isn't the one that was damaged, is it?
No.
I think you'd probably make them another dog out of the hair they'll get out of.
Any questions on this one? None? Okay. Oh, you have a question?
Yeah, actually, this was a dog vehicle, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it mentioned about all the dog stuff that was being sent along with it, right? So, Nashua, former place of my running around, yes.
Okay. Engineering?
Yes, Your Honor. Under item 2 under engineering is the amending chapter 63 for the speed limit on Tower Terrace Road. Previously, City Council approved Tower Terrace Road to be 35 miles an hour from the east end to the west end, basically city limits to city limits. As part of our agreement with this Linn-Mar School at the high school there, to obtain right-of-way, they requested that we would set that area as, when children present, 25 miles an hour. For the area east 1,000 feet from 10th Street. We're recommending to do that. That takes an ordinance, so it would take 3 readings. It's something we've agreed to as part of that agreement.
So this is in the new section?
Yeah, it's a section that was just poured. Should be open in a couple weeks.
And that's consistent with 29th Avenue and 10th Street, the other streets around the campus. They're all signed that way.
Yeah, we've done that around most of the schools, if not all of them now. So
Makes sense.
I was thinking Tower Terrace was going to be 40 or so miles an hour, since that's a boulevard.
it's currently posted 35 in all the existing sections.
Yeah.
That's the based on the category within our street network system. It's 35 mile an hour. It's a design speed of 40, but it's posted 35.
Okay.
So you're telling us you've been going 40 through there, huh?
Yeah.
You know, I've always believed that the school speed limit should just be that and not say, well, kids are present. You know, kids are always present. And I think the speed limit within 1,000 feet or whatever the ordinance is now around schools, because you have playground equipment and there's always kids there. Not when school is in force. It's just, how in the world does the police department judge that? You know, when somebody says, well, it says when kids are present, well, who's to say they're not? I'd rather see it just go to 25 within 1,000 feet, period.
Well, Paul, we have had a clarification from the Attorney General, and he has stated that they need to be in the right-of-way for us to write a ticket.
Yeah.
So we went that route and made sure we had that clarification on that.
He's made other mistakes.
Yeah. Our conflict is when Linn-Mar puts a building adjacent to a major arterial or a minor arterial where we need to move traffic, we need those speeds to be 35 mile an hour during the majority of the day. Otherwise, people will use neighborhood streets instead of those arterials. When we have kids, for the most part, within 20 minutes in the morning, maybe half hour in the morning, half hour in the afternoon, it helps with our system to move traffic if we can get those speeds back up again during those times. The kids don't tend, I mean, they tend to be adjacent to the right-of-way, but they don't tend to be in the right-of-way. So we feel it's a safe condition.
The reason I bring that up is that East Robbins Road, where we dropped that back to 35, boy, that is really hard to hold 35 going down the hill. And Tower Terrace is the same way. I mean, it's an open road, nothing there. So
Hopefully that won't always be the case.
Well, but, I mean, it'll be a controlled turn even when something there, but I don't know, 35 seems slow on these big roads like that.
Yeah, and we've kind of, as a region, we've agreed that Tower Terrace would be 35 from one end to the other, so we're kind of staying consistent with that.
I guess for my part, I think that Robbins Road, dropping it back was a mistake, but that was,
You can always bring that back up
Ask
again,
the people who live near it. So.
yeah.
Your Honor, item number 3, I just want to mention, it's not marked, but the Imagine Art in the Alley project, we may pull that before Thursday. We're just dealing with a couple small items that may need to get resolved before then. Also, item number 7 and 8 are together, or 6 and 7 are together on that street light. Within my report, I did state that from TAC that the current light spread is 550 feet in that neighborhood. Our code does call for a 600 feet spread between lights and an intersection, so it really currently meets our current street lighting code. So we're not recommending any change at this time.
Those, is that one of those shaded lights where it's recessed up and it's like, right there?
They're our typical neighborhood light, yeah.
I just wonder if we went to one that had a wider spread, would that help?
Well, those are leased lights, and there are very few selections that Alliant provides for us. We could go to a Cobra light, but we don't tend to do that in residential areas unless we have to. There's a lot of trees in that area, which kind of helps the problem, I guess you might say.
Yeah.
But it currently does meet our code, so if we start putting in those intermittent lights, we may end up doing it all over town.
Okay.
On a new street, are they 600 feet apart? So like on Tower Terrace?
Yeah, the only places they're not is where we have decorative lights, like in the uptown area.
Sure.
Tower Terrace are every 300 feet. Some of those high visibility, we'll call them our specialty streets, basically, that are more decorative than not. But those are approved by council through the project, and those spacings, you may not be aware of it, I guess, all the time, but those spacings are always within the project plans.
And in most cases, like Tower Terrace, those are lights that the city owns where we just pay an electric bill on it rather than having a lease rate that we pay to Alliant Energy. There's a few exceptions to that, but for the most part, we own those lights on those routes.
If the neighborhood got together, could they lease a light from Alliant, or would that be prohibitively expensive?
We don't typically do that in the right-of-way. Probably not. I'm not sure Alliant would do that. They would provide a security light, but I think it has to be on private property.
Okay.
Let's see. Number 8 and 9 are requests we had on 12th Street. That's on the north end at the dead end there by the church playground. They are requesting no parking. He had originally asked for 20 feet. We would like to make it 50 feet. It gives us more room for public service and so forth, emergency, gives him room to turn around as well as him to get out of his driveway. So we are recommending posting that no parking on the north 50 feet of that on both sides. He's requested it, yes. And yes, we've notified him that. We sent him a letter, I think it was on Friday.
Questions? None?
Number 11 is a modification of our 28E agreement with Cedar Rapids on the Tower Terrace Road from C Avenue to Alburnett. I think I've mentioned it before, but we were originally going to do a categorical exclusion on the environmental study within this corridor. The feds have now come back and said that we need a full environmental evaluation for the entire corridor. That not only adds a year to the project, but it adds about $240,000 in engineering fees. Really no way around that. We are just proceeding as necessary. We need to modify the 2080 agreement to make those payments to the consultant, which is contracted with Cedar Rapids. Questions on that?
So the additional funds, that comes from Marion or from everybody? Or from Cedar Rapids too?
We have funding that comes through. Our portion is 45% of all the costs. And of that 45%, quite a bit of that comes from federal dollars.
Right.
So only a portion of that 211,000 or whatever it is, 211,400 will come from Marion.
45% of it?
Yes. So it'll be 45% of it, and anything above I think it's around 4 million we're getting in federal dollars.
Back on your memo about that, it shows the total cost of Tower Terrace Road to Sea Avenue. That's not all of Marion though, right? It shows what, $6.6 million?
I think that's I didn't bring anything with me, Joe, on that. Oh, yes, I do.
6.06.
Total is about
6.6, yeah.
little over 12 million.
Right.
6.6 of that is from Sea Avenue East. Of that, 45% is ours. So if you go to the next page, page 2 within the agreement, our portion of the consulting fee is $545,000. Total cost, our share is $1.4 million.
Oh, okay.
Of that, let's see, of that 873,900 is federal aid match.
So for 1.4 million, we get, for that total project, we get a $12 million worth of road.
Yes.
Taking it all the way out to Sea Avenue.
Yeah, that is the entire section from Sea Avenue to Albernet Road. Part of this project includes also from Sea Avenue West within Cedar Rapids for the Hy-Vee store and that area west. That amount is in this as well.
Is any of that county? There's no county in
Yes, there is some county in there. We have agreed, at least in principle, for the two cities to pick up Lynn County's portion because of their lack of interest and involvement in the project, because it'll eventually be in the city, one or the other.
So we don't need a 28E type agreement with them then?
Currently, I think they are still...
They're still a party to the agreement, Dan, because we
Yes,
can't
thank you.
remember.
I was looking at the signing page. Yeah, they're still part of it, but they're not involved in it financially.
Okay.
Because for as long as some of that territory is in the county, pieces of this project, like if we had right-of-way acquisition or things like that, right-of-way would have to be in Lynn County's name first until ultimately it would transfer over to whichever city it gets annexed into.
Can we annex all of it and just push off to the west there?
There's an annexation line out there, right over by Meadow Knolls.
Get to work on that, Devin, would you?
Any questions on that?
Thank you.
Yep. Item number 12 is also part of that Tower Terrace Road agreement that we have with Linn-Mar Community Schools. As part of that, we agreed to build a fence per their request along the south side of the right-of-way between the road and the stadium. Within that, our code allows for a 6-foot fence, but they were requesting an 8-foot fence. The best we could really do for them was that the city council would apply to the Board of Adjustment for an 8-foot fence. They're acknowledging the fact that that may not happen, but they at least want to go through that process to make sure that we can or cannot have an 8-foot fence. As part of that agreement the council approved, you are the body that needs to make that request. So in making that request through this resolution, staff would go ahead and proceed with that process through the Board of Adjustment.
It couldn't be 6 foot with barbed wire on top, could it?
Originally they wanted, I don't know if it was barbed wire, but they did want the higher intensity
I'm kidding.
fencing.
What would be the reason why variance would be denied?
They do not typically approve fences above the code. They just haven't typically in the past.
I can't imagine we would need any taller than a 6-foot fence along any roadway. What is,
I have no-
why is Linmar requesting the,
Part of the agreement, they wanted an 8-foot fence, and then they wanted the ability to actually put a back, what do they call it?
I didn't know what the term was, so I couldn't think. They actually wanted like a prison with the.
Or you know, back out, the old backstops in a playground, you'd have
Yeah.
be tall and then it'd come back, so if you were climbing it, you couldn't.
Get over the top of
Get
it.
over
They
the
want
top.
the kids to not be able to climb it.
You can put razor wire up and that'll take care of it too.
I think there was also a concern that because parts of it would be installed on a slope, that even if it's a 5-foot or a 6-foot fence, on one side it's not going to feel that tall because you'd be standing up from the fence. But I think if you go out there and look, I don't think the grades are as severe as some of them originally thought that would be as much of an issue.
Yeah, it's pretty flat now.
There's different ways to accomplish that. I mean, you can do I think it'd look horrible, adjacent to the public right of way. 2, I think you could put vertical slats, which you're gonna have a heck of a lot. I'd like to find somebody that can climb a 6-foot vertical slat fence.
What have we verbally agreed with them to do on that fence?
We have agreed to pursue application to the Board of Adjustment for an 8-foot fence. If denied by the Board of Adjustment, we will put in a 6-foot fence.
Thank you.
It's a chain link fence?
Chain link cyclone, yes.
On
We're looking
the
at
south side
a
only?
black chain link,
South side only?
south side only.
But why do we have to put in to the Board of Adjustments? Why doesn't Linmar have to, since they're the ones that want the 8-foot fence?
They felt that City Council would have a better chance of getting approval.
I have to say, because I'm asked every morning, why don't we just have a fellow on Dry Creek Lane go ahead and build the 8-foot fence as he did in his yard, and we've never done anything with that. So I've got that off my chest. I've said it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Within the negotiations with Linmar to get this right-of-way available for the road, we made some concessions and some negotiations, and this is one of those. I think they were done on fair means. I think it was a good conversation in the end. This is one of the things that we agreed that we would do for them.
I mean, as high as they've got the road bed set up there, the fence is gonna be way down here.
It's actually, if you've been out there recently, it's all pretty flat. They did a lot of grading over the weekend, and it looks pretty good.
Okay.
So currently, if you go out there now, the snow fence, or the construction snow fence is where the new fence will be.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Anything else? Thank you.
The first item identified there is the public hearing for the property south of Lebeda, 2042, or Plat of Survey 2042 at 2525 7th Avenue. This is a redo of the public hearing and sale that we did back in July. We do a lot of work with Mooney Ingle Land Company, and we processed everything as Mooney Ingle Land Company, and this is one that he's doing as Mooney Investments LLC. So we processed everything with the wrong title on this. Just for refresh, it was identified in the packet, but this is the property that's north of what will be the future 6th Ave and south of the property line for the existing Lebeda, so it's a remnant piece of property. I think it was valued at about $12,000. We're going to receive, as a part of a final plat, a portion out the front half, so it's really just land exchange and is a part of a reinvestment into the community with the project. So they didn't build the second building on that lot, but there is a second building planned that will be located on the south side of that lot. So there is future investment planned on that property. So the sale price is $1. So it was, as it'll read in the deed. So essentially, it was part of an incentive for the development of the property. Any questions on that? I think we went over this back in July. Just everything's the same as it was then. It just
Except for it being $1.
No, it was $1. Well, actually, it was X in the resolution. Was incorrect. So.
So they still planning the detention basin and all that, and
Yeah,
all
absolutely.
that back there.
Yep. And there's a plan for a second building and access to the property and
Right.
all that. Yep. Number 7, Ms. Pazur, is for you. This is the motion directing staff to proceed with the sale of surplus property located, and the address in the agenda was incorrect. Well, I think it's correct on the new agenda, sorry. Yes, it's correct, 3490 Indian Creek Road. This is Mr. Walters' request to... Oh. Well, you shouldn't have told me that. Still got to be published. No, we will process that. So this is for the shed that's located in the property. The gentleman came and spoke, so we can get that published and see if anybody else wants to bid on it.
Is it a best offer type thing? Because I know what he offered for it, but.
Correct. Maybe we'd say minimum so that he doesn't come in and bid $1.
Yeah.
So we'll work through the details.
Because, I think probably, I was just astounded that he was willing to pay that much for that shed, so.
Is it that white, just the white tin
Yeah.
section of that building?
Yep.
And how much did he offer for it?
1,000.
Yeah.
And he'd move it and everything himself?
Yeah.
Yep. Not into the city limits.
Say that
Very
again?
important. Not in the city limits.
You'd move it to be not
Somewhere
in-
else.
Off city limits?
Off, not in city limits.
Wow, $1,000.
The experience hasn't went well with the moving of homes,
Yeah.
buildings, or structures.
What?
Number 9 is starred, but we're gonna remove that one. We're still waiting for abstracts and title opinions on those properties. We thought they might get done, so we'll remove that. This is for the sale of property to Genesis Equity, consistent with the development agreement for the roundabout project.
Okay.
Will they be able to sign off the project even if this is still hanging? No?
I think we're a ways from that project being signed off on, but unless I'm incorrect, but we're anticipating that we can get everything for the next agenda. So we're just, the titles, or the abstracts just haven't been created. So we can't do a title opinion.
Any other questions on the
Your Honor, I just
planning
wanted,
section?
I just wanted to mention, since you brought up the roundabout project, we have been trying for this couple weeks now to get the water main on the east roundabout to pass the bacteria test. We have had difficulty with that. They've run about 4 tests, I think. That has been the current delay under that project. We cannot pave until that's done. So I just wanted to make sure you were aware that there's stuff going on out there. It's moving forward, but we just can't get the test on the water main to pass. Until that happens, we cannot pave, we cannot finish our storm sewer work, so forth. So we're hoping to have that happen soon. We're not sure what the problem is. It just will not pass the test.
Too much bacteria.
Yeah, we think there might be a dead animal in it or something, but we're not sure. It's not connected to the current system, but we're not sure why the bacteria is just too high for us to get it to pass, and we have to have that done.
Okay.
So Todd won't make that a feature in his water.
Wait a minute, I'm drinking city water right now.
Any other questions on the planning section? Anything in the planning items? Okay.
The only one on mine that I wanted to just have a brief discussion on was number 1, and that's a request from Mr. Ollinger at Murdoch Funeral Homes. Just as by way of background, when the police station moved out to the current location, those 2 lots were combined into one lot, so that this is part of the lot now for Fire Station 2. Originally, we thought that we may be able to make it available for future development, as the original plan was that we would no longer need to have that antenna and the supporting structure there that was there when the police station was there. As they moved through the Lynn County-wide radio project, it turned out that we did still need to keep that, and so rather than having about a 2-acre parcel, there's not as much property there that would be available for development. It doesn't look like, in just looking at what would need to happen to make it a separate parcel, that there would be enough room for someone to do a standalone project there. So if the council was interested in allowing for private development on part of that site, Murdoch's is probably the logical choice to be able to do that. I know they've visited with me, and I think have visited with Chief Crable about the possibility of doing that. To date, we haven't seen any firm plans or anything on it, but they wanted to know, I think, before they went down that path, whether the city council would have any interest in looking at that or not. We can work on that and give you some maps to show you an idea of, if we were to do something, what property might be available, what we will need to keep for our own future use on that site, and then kind of move forward from there.
Okay, questions?
Is the communications that are on that tower, is that county, is it city owned? Who's actually owning it, and what's the operating expense for that tower there?
The city owns the tower. The equipment on it, I believe, is maintained through the 911 board.
So is it just city communication, or is there other?
Anybody in the county can jump on that communication. It's part of the overall communication network for the entire county. Obviously, most of our traffic goes through it, but it's not strictly dedicated to us.
Do we have any revenue off of that tower for that, for the county's usage?
I'm not
No.
sure.
No?
No, that's our part of the communication system. The whole communication system, the interoperability radio system, the P25, that's Lynn County, Marion, and Cedar Rapids. We're the 3 main entities that bond that whole system together. So we went into it together, and so that's our part of our contribution too.
Okay. I was just, in the back of my mind, I was just wondering if there was any interest in selling it as a whole parcel and leasing back the tower back, like the cell services do. That takes us off of the hook of that back piece of it and make a clean sweep of it, so in the future when it is no longer in service, we're out of it. But
well, because of the way the fiber was laid, right now the microwave that's on that tower needs to meet the police station where at its present location, where we have no communications with Station 2.
Right. So yeah, no, we'd want to keep it in service. I was just thinking if we potentially looked at selling the whole thing and just, the utilities or the services lease that back as it is, obviously to the new owner for a 99-year lease or something. But I was just curious. Thank you.
I always thought that a better place for that tower would be out on the north water tower. If you could put a small tower up on top of the water tower there, that'd be a better, because it's a higher elevation there than it is where it's at now.
I don't think that the cost of that has been looked at, but it could be.
Yeah,
it really could be.
Then you wouldn't have the liability of a tower. And I want to throw in that if you can get the building inspection department to sign off on a waiver, I'll put it in my yard.
I was expecting you to say that you thought the better location would be just off of 29th Avenue.
Yeah, if you could get them to sign off, just put it in my yard then.
I could look into that with the Radio Governance Board.
Yeah, I think that would be a good spot for it, because
okay. I will do so.
The reason I say that is that the amateur radio community has been looking at that tower as well because of its height, the height above the terrain.
Which tower?
The water tower.
The north water tower.
On 35th?
Yeah,
35th,
that's a real high spot right there. And so the water tower is already, 150 feet or so.
Right.
And so,
Some of the microwaves have limited distance, that's part of the problem
yeah,
too.
so I bet you can see the police station from the top of that water tower, because it's a clear shot over there, too.
I can check with that.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good plan, and then the city wouldn't have the tower liability.
You know, historically, George Murdoch used to tell me he's the only person that paid any money for any land out there, because the Katz's gave the fire and city the land for the PD, and then they finally built the other thing. But I got to tell you a short story. When George Murdoch moved out there with a new funeral home, he was the only building on that street, and they put up a sign that said "dead end." And George said, "Is there a way we could change that sign so that it said no outlet?" But they did change the sign for him. Your Honor, I have one other thing. I noticed we have our newly elected county supervisor here this evening.
Re-elected.
Congratulations. And wondered if he had anything or reason that you're here.
He'll be joining us for item I.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Yes, Your Honor, I make a motion to adjourn to a closed session pending the,
Second.
well, pending the legal judgment on this issue.
I believe you are covered to, excuse me, you believe you are covered to go into closed session. Just make sure that you just state the code section.
Okay, so we have it's been moved and seconded to adjourn to closed session regarding land acquisition. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Draper,
Yes.
Mr. Spinks,
Yes.
Mayor Abawasley,
Yes?
Mr. Brandt,
Yes.
Mr. Sternad,
Yes.
Ms. Pazur.
Yes.
Thank you.